This is Kelly.
And this is Amy.
And you're listening to Diary of a Death Investigator. So, the inspiration for this week's episode, there's a lot of chores I don't like doing around the house, but there's one that I really hate doing, and that's walking the dog. I typically don't have to walk the dog. My husband walks the dog. I don't know how that became his chore. I think because he likes walking and he likes going to the beach and he likes going to like this forest, whatever. So he always takes the dog with him, but he's not home right now. So it has become my chore to walk the dog. And my dog's not bad to walk. Amy walks him when she's here.
He's great. He's my running buddy. So
yeah, he will go at the pace that you want to go at. I don't want to say that he's not necessarily like a book smart dog. I feel like he's like a street smart dog, maybe like an in between. Like he's not the one. He was
adopted, Kelly. So
yeah, we adopted him at 4. He knows all the commands: sit, stay, lay down. Now he knows them, but he only does them when it's going to be in his best interest or it benefits him.
Say TREAT. I can't say the actual word because my dogs are in here too.
Yeah, he's here. Well, I'll just say it. He knows the word. There's some words he knows. He knows the word beach. He knows walk. He knows cookie. He knows dinner. He knows all these words. He's laying on the bed with me right now and his ears keep flickering.
Saying all his favorite words.
All his favorite words.
Those words.
But I don't know what it is about walking him that I don't like. He's, like I said, he's not a bad dog. It's just that it's a very tedious thing. So I drove down to the park that's next door. It's like 3. I drove because the hills of my house I'm not doing that.
I know. They're rough. I've walked him up those, so.
No. So I drive him down the street 3 minutes away to this park. And we do a giant circle around the park. And this park over the weekend has people playing soccer out there, like adult soccer league. So they have like taco trucks and stuff out there, like super fun. Like it's not a bad place. And it's not even hot at my house. It's like high 70s right now. And it's like 4:00 in the afternoon. But he has to stop. It takes us about 40 minutes to go a little over 1.25 miles because this fool has to pee like 4 times in 4 minutes, and always in the spot that like you don't want him to, right? Like you're like at least getting onto like the dirt, not in the middle of the street. Like it looks like I'm a bad parent, right? And then he's got to take a poop, right? And he wants to poop like it's always a wet poop because he pushes it out every time we go walking, and it's always like in the most inconvenient spot, like on the tall grass, and everybody's watching you because they want to make sure that you clean it up. So it's like a 2-bagger or a 3-bagger, and you're just trying not to get it all over your hands. So maybe that's why I don't like walking him. And again, and then you have all the people watching you walk the dogs, right? And half of them are off leash. And Amy and I, when we walk him, we always walk him on leash. Like he has a harness, and he's like a 55-pound dog. It's not like he'll drag you, but he doesn't really pull. But my husband doesn't put him on leash, and he believes in freedom. So a lot of people know us around town, not because they know us, but because they know the dog. He's very distinct looking. So you know that people are going to remember you if he has done good things, but also if he's done bad things. And he's socially awkward and he charges at other dogs.
Yeah, well, that's Stevie too, but Stevie's 120 pounds and a little bit scarier looking. So.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's the people who drop packages off. He's like, his hair, he gets that mohawk when they come, and he doesn't like strangers at his house. But when he's out, he like loves going on walks. So he has like a smile on his face the entire time. And he has this little like tooth that gets stuck in his mouth. And during the winter, he wears sweatshirts out there. So it's not like he's super intimidating. But what I think I figured out why I don't like walking him is because when we're out there, he's the alpha. Like he's in charge.
It's his domain.
Yes. And I always tell him he doesn't have good listening ears. And the only time he'll listen to me is if like he thinks he's getting a cookie out of it. That's the only time he's going to listen. So my husband realized when we go walking, he noticed that when we would pass dogs and he didn't bark at the other dog, that he would sit and wait. Well, that's because I trained him that if he didn't bark at other dogs when we walked by, he would get a cookie. So he's like, we don't play that game. That's not because he shouldn't be barking at other dogs. But yes, he's the alpha. And I also think he's the alpha when he goes on walks because when he's at home, my 17.5-pound Tabby is the alpha. So he's like lowest man on the totem pole in the house.
He's scared of all the cats.
Yeah. So it's like he goes out and puffs up his chest. Like when he's out there, it's like I have to tell people when they kind of look at him sideways, I'm all, look, he's the lowest man on the totem pole in our house. Like he has cat siblings. He's the only dog. So, and they're like, oh.
See, that's not how I am. Normally, my biggest worries are because I go for like at least 4 miles when I take my dogs. So it's, what am I going to run into? Is it going to be some wild animal? Is it going to be some creep? Or people's other dogs who are off leash and they run up to my dog. So I'm like, I'm not responsible for what happens to your dog if it's Stevie. Now, Mabel, she'll pee when she's scared, but Stevie's,
which is all the time.
Yeah, Stevie's the guardian, though, so that's her job. I'm just like, my dog's harnessed, so I like it. I don't think it's a chore, but...
Well, I don't worry about weirdos coming up to me because I think I have that look that people just don't, like, come up to me. They don't really say anything to me. I don't know. I'm not like I'm walking with a purpose. I just don't have that approachable look, I think.
Well, I'm like a bad case, like waiting to happen because I'm like on the orchards and it's nighttime and it's out in the middle of nowhere, but I carry mace and a knife and I have my dog. So I'd be like, you'd have to be pretty dumb to approach me. And then if you have a bag of poop, that's a good weapon too, because you can like smack someone in the face with the bag of poop. So
especially
no one likes that. So too much your own risk.
Yeah. So while I was out walking, I text Amy. I said, do you have any cases involving dog walking? Because how many people die doing the chores that they hate? Like just an incentive to not do them, right? And she goes, oh, yep, I have some. So
yes. Yeah, I do. And these were cases that I worked in the morgue, but anything or anytime there's ever a death from a dog, like it's actually pretty big news. It's not just local news, but like it's actually like national news, because if you look up this one particular case, you'll see that it has a lot of articles about it. And then the person that was responsible of these other dogs, they were also held accountable as well. So the first one I'm going to talk about, this happened back in 2017. And this lady, she was 82 years old. And so this little 82-year-old grandma was walking her little tiny dog. It was like, it wasn't a Pomeranian. It was like some type of terrier, but like of that size. And we know that in this neighborhood, there has been an issue with dogs getting out of their fence in the backyard, and neighbors have been complaining about these dogs, and apparently the owners had been notified of this as well, and were supposed to have taken care of it. And I think even to the point like they were scaring kids and stuff like that because they looked like scary dogs. So when this lady was out walking her little dog, these two dogs just so happened to be out running the streets. And the dogs were initially more interested in her dog, right? Because her little dog starts barking at the big dogs. And usually, little dogs have like big dog syndrome where they think that they're ferocious. But these two dogs, it says in the articles that they were pit bulls, but I remember specifically them being what's called a Doggo Argentino. So they look like pit bulls, but they're like all white. And then they have like this one black spot around their eye. Like they're very distinct for this like black spot. And they're huge
not
dogs.
Not the target dog. We're not talking about like the target dog, right?
No, they look like pit bulls, except for like their coloring. Like it's a different breed.
Maybe Diesel is a doggo, whatever, because he's white.
No, they're huge. They're
sorry,
big.
Diesel.
They're big dogs and not necessarily the best temperament, especially if they're not trained well or, just left out in the backyard all day long without anyone giving them any type of interaction. And we know that this woman's dog was barking at these other dogs. And so the dogs start approaching them when this lady's out walking. And so she's walking through her neighborhood. This is what she used to do like every day. She used to walk in that area every day at that time. Like that was like a normal thing for her to do. And these dogs started to actually attack her. And then her little dog tried to like protect her. And the dogs killed her little dog. And then they just mauled her literally to death. And people that had witnessed what was going on, they actually saw the dogs like dragging her down the street too. So not only were they like literally biting and tearing away at her body, but like dragging her afterwards. And so the police were called to this scene, and pest control or whatever, the animal control. And
pest control.
Well, I guess that would be a pest if they were being menaces to society. But the cops showed up and the dogs were biting the cop cars, like the front of the bumper, because the cops were trying to like basically like push them to get them away from the woman. But eventually they had to get out of their vehicles and they had to shoot the dogs. And I think it was 7 or 8 bullets that finally made one of them go down. And then the other one was injured by being hit by the car, but also being shot. And it was still alive at the time. So then they took it to, I think, like a emergency vet. And then it was eventually put down because it wasn't doing very well. But yeah, it took a lot to even just put these dogs down, which was incredible. Like 7 or 8 gunshots is insane. So of course, the woman and her smaller dog were both deceased. So when we get this woman, they also brought in the dog that was put down on scene by the gunshots. So one of the Doggo Argentinos. And they did that because parts of the woman were in the dog's stomach. So they were wanting our pathologist to cut open this dog. And he's like, I'm a human pathologist. I don't do necropsies. Like, he was not very happy about it because he's just like, I don't want to do this. He's like, I don't want to open this dog up. He's like, it's different anatomy. And he's like, that's just not my job. But you really want to do that because it will just further compound your evidence. And if you can find basically the human remains inside the dog, it's also good as well to bring them in because the doctor can also measure like the dog's mouth and basically like the size of their jaw and their teeth, because you want to be able to match that up with the wounds. So this is where I kind of come into the story here because I'm working in the morgue that day and we had to collect evidence off of this woman because the owners can be held liable. So in order to do that, this is technically a homicide or manslaughter case. So we have to collect evidence on this woman. And I didn't even think her head was attached at first when they put her on the table because these dogs had literally ripped her throat out and it was just hanging on by like the back piece of skin. And I know that the cops that were on scene, they said by the time they got to her head was turned a full 180 degrees around. So it wasn't even attached anymore. It was just like hanging on by skin because that's how aggressive these dogs were. Like they went for her jugular and she had all these other bites and a lot of them were to her face and her head. So one half of her face was like completely ripped off. And then the backside of her head also had this huge rip in it because the dog, when you measured from the top of the impact point to like the bottom where the jaw met, so top of the jaw to the bottom of the jaw, it was a solid 6 inches just of like where the jaw opened and could clasp down. And so that would technically be like a laceration because it was like a bite and a tear. And you could see, I mean, this woman had instantly bruised as soon as she was bitten, especially since she was still alive. You can still have blood flowing through like the capillaries. All these defensive wounds, to her arms because she had put her arms up to try to defend herself. I know that one of her fingers was like barely hanging on. So they just were relentless in going after her. And to me, that's just insane, because I could see where they would be going after the dog, but I think animals are fully aware when something's not a threat. So to attack her as well, and a dog that is really small, it says a lot, I think, about those animals. So
did anyone see the owners out there? Like, did the owners ever try to come out and stop them?
no, the owners were not around. They were not even home at this time. So when they finally did end up going to the house to try to make contact with these owners, the wife or girlfriend was there. And she's like, oh, my boyfriend is not currently here. Like, he's out of town. And they're like, well, you need to let us know when he gets back into town, because this happened. And
well, she obviously knew something happened because the dogs weren't there.
Well, she was probably used to them just not being in the yard, because if this happened all the time, she's probably just like, oh, they're out wandering the streets. So, I mean, who knows? She might have been afraid of them too. So they knew that there was a huge hole in their fence, like under their fence. And they had been actually told to fix this fence multiple times. She had reported to the police, oh yeah, we tried to fix the hole. They put like a couple pieces of boards. They nailed these boards and then put a ice chest in the bottom, like nailed it to this ice chest. And I'm like, if these dogs can rip through bone and skin like it's nothing, you don't think a plastic little ice chest is going to be like, come on. So this guy was arrested for this, and he was actually being tried for second-degree manslaughter. And so this then happened, I think in 2018, where he was actually like sent to court for this. Like, he was arrested and tried and went to court. It says that he was actually found not guilty. And I'm shocked by this, because I don't know. I mean, a lot of times when you hear about animal attacks, they always put down the animal. But to what point do you hold like the owner accountable as well, especially if this was a problem? Because other people were like, well, what if this would have happened to a little kid? Would that have changed the situation? Like, would it have been a harsher penalty, or would he actually have been found guilty? Because I know that there was a jury that were the ones that were presiding over basically his conviction. And so I was shocked to see that he wasn't convicted for this, because of just how gruesome it was. And of course, in court, they're showing the autopsy photos, and the pathologist is on stand testifying to this. And I mean, it literally looks like the woman was attacked by a grizzly bear or something. Like, it was just very, very gruesome. And the fact that these dogs had to be shot that many times, even after being hit by a car, they just weren't going to stop. So how do you know, if the cops didn't show up, something else would have happened, because I'm sure if the owner showed up on scene, those dogs probably would have attacked their owners too. So extremely sad. Apparently she was just the sweetest woman, and everyone really liked her. But, it's not always the big ferocious dogs that do this either. This other case, I want to say it happened maybe in 2018 or 2019. I was still working in-house, and I was working in the morgue that day. So there again, this was not my case. But I remember walking up to the table, the autopsy table, and being like, what the heck happened to this lady? And they're like, oh, she was mauled by dogs. And I looked at it, because it's you can look at her legs where most of the damage was done to, and you could see all these little tiny teeth marks. So little incision marks from the teeth going in. Well, incision marks from the teeth entering, stab wounds, right? But then it's technically a laceration, because when dogs bite down, they also do this crushing effect. So it's not just the biting down, so puncturing the skin, but it's also the crushing of the skin and bones, where it can cause contusions and more significant injuries. And then it's also the tearing of the tissue too, when they pull back. So there's multiple things that are happening to the body at the time.
Was she wearing pants?
I don't remember if she was or not, but when I remember seeing her on the autopsy table, and her, of course, not being dressed. And it was just crazy. I mean, literally her skin was just covered in these bites it looked like mostly from the knees down. And then she'd actually fallen down on the ground. And then that's when the dogs were actually able to get like to her face and her arms. And her arms.
Zombie dogs.
Well, once she had fallen over, she's trying to like protect her face. And so she has her arms up over her face and the dogs are biting her arms, biting her face. And so I'm like, what happened to this lady? Like, what did this to her? And they're like, oh, it was wiener dogs. And I was like, I didn't realize that wiener dogs or dachshunds were this aggressive. And they said, well, it was a pack of 10 dogs. So it's like pack mentality, right? It's like following the alpha dog. So if one's aggressive, then the rest of them are going to like jump on it as well.
Are they all from like the same owner, or do they have like a gang in the neighborhood?
Yeah, running the streets. No, it was her neighbor's dogs. And the same thing, these dogs were said to be like a menace. And of course, this is more in an area that's a little more rural, smaller town. But
was the lady old?
No, she was younger. I want to say she looked maybe in her 40s. Like she was not an elderly lady, like where
was she wouldn't have in good shape?
Yeah, that was part of it as well. So like she couldn't like necessarily like run away from them. Because I'm like, man, I would have like punted one of them like a football and taken it off her.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like one of my really good friends has one, and she doesn't run very fast, so.
Yeah. Well, if you're injured though, too, I mean, that's going to slow you down. And I think there was just so many of them that they had surrounded her that I think at first she was just trying to get them off of her. And at that point, I think it was just too late. She was like overwhelmed by the pack. The pack took her on.
Did she have a dog with her?
No, it was just her. She was just outside in her yard. So
in her yard. So they came through the fence or came through.
Yeah, and just came into the yard. So.
Oh, that's even worse.
I know, right? So, yeah, it's not just the big dogs that look scary. It's also the ones that are unsuspecting as well, because you never know.
How did she die? Like, what was the wound?
It was, bleeding out. So what we call like exsanguination, and then trauma to like her neck. So it was not just like blunt force trauma. That's technically what like bite marks are. They're considered blunt force trauma because, like I said, the biting is a crushing effect. So yeah, exsanguination is bleeding out.
Who found her?
I think her neighbor was out there. It was either her neighbor or like one of her other like relatives that was in the yard that like witnessed it happening.
So no one stopped it?
I don't know.
Isn't that crazy that like no one stopped it? I mean, I'm picturing like little zombie wiener dogs, because that's.
I mean, I know what I would do, but.
Well, I'm just thinking, I guess, like, especially with dogs. I mean, we've grown up with dogs our whole lives. So for us, like, we've never been scared of a dog, maybe, or like, we have our first dog. When Jeff was younger, he got bit in the face by a dog, and that was the only dog that he ever had as a kid, or up until the point that we got Diesel. So I don't know if it was necessarily fear on his part, but for, some people it is. Like, we have people come over and they're scared of the dog, but.
Well, rightfully so, because I think that's a lot of why people are scared, because the dogs that they're around are aggressive dogs. I know that people are like really scared of Stevie, which she's huge and her bark is loud, but it always cracks me up when people are afraid of Mabel. I'm like, she's more afraid of you, I promise.
I like when people come over and everybody wants to like go for the cats, right? Because cats, they think like, oh, that's so fluffy. That's like,
no, I'm afraid of those cats, or one in particular. So I'll take Diesel over them any day, because no one wants to deal with those cats. Just saying.
Yeah, my cat is something else. Before we started podcasting, I had to have a pep talk with him to not kill the chipmunks that I found in my backyard.
I know, it's so sad because, I have to do the same thing for my cat. I had to protect those bunnies in my backyard for like 3 weeks. I was bunny mom because their mom is so stupid that she's like, I know I've had babies here before and your dog has killed them, but I'm going to keep having them here. And now it's not the dog, it's the cat, because she's mean. So
Well, it just makes me sad. These are, I mean, obviously I asked for it because I just wanted a reason to not have to walk the dog anymore. But big dogs are one thing because I do like worry sometimes, I guess, when I'm out. Sometimes you just get a feeling from a dog and you just know if they're bad, kind of like with people. Diesel is very well behaved in public. Like, I know I joke that he does certain things when he's out because he's the alpha, but my dog's probably been to more restaurants than most people.
Well, because he knows he's going to get a steak. So
Yeah.
he's like, if I'm bad, I don't get this food. And then he's begging other people for food.
He goes everywhere with us. He has separation anxiety, but I'm fortunate to live in a place that allows dogs in almost every restaurant. Not inside. There's only a couple of those, but like patios, and everybody's dog friendly and everybody loves him and he loves the attention. So, but there are times when we're out, and I think you've witnessed it, where he, like, somebody will walk by and it's not even someone that you would suspect, and he does not, they smell different, or
I think it's their sixth sense. I think animals know. They're smart.
He growls at them and barks at them. And I just think it's so weird because it's usually the people I wouldn't like expect. And so then
there's something wrong with you. Yeah. My dog doesn't like you.
Yeah. Then your worry meter, like, right. That's when you like kind of pay more attention to your surroundings because your animals are telling you. But
hey, I'm never afraid when I'm with Stevie because I'm like, she just looks scary. And I know that when I was driving across country back in the spring and I stopped in New Mexico, and of course it's like midnight, and New Mexico's not the greatest of places sometimes. Depends on where you stop. And there was a homeless man out there, and I saw him asking other people for money. And then I know when I got the dogs out of the truck, he did not come up to me, but he was sure eyeballing the dogs. So,
well, it's funny that you say that because I'll say this thing and then we can go. But Amy and I drove 20 hours straight when she moved back to California. And at one point, it did dawn on me that two girls shouldn't probably be driving at 3 o'clock in the morning or making stops at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I think I told Amy this. Yeah. But I think I told Amy this. Like, we were at a truck stop. We backed in to let the dogs out in this little grass area. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, man, this is probably how people go missing. But then I started looking at us, and we're in a cop-looking car, undercover cop-looking car. Both of us, I'm not saying that we look rough, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning. We don't look like people that should be messed with. I have a box cutter on the side of my car just because I was packing up stuff at the very end for Amy, breaking down stuff before we moved.
At one point, she wore it like a necklace, so...
And then we have these two dogs in the back of the car, and I'm thinking, oh no, somebody would be really dumb to like.
And I was packing, so.
So I think like, yeah. So anyways, I thought, well, the dogs definitely added to that tough look.
Oh yeah, for sure. So who'd come up to a grizzly bear? I mean, that'd be kind of dumb, but.
We have had cases with dummies in them, so.
'Tis true. But yeah, so. Speaking of, I have to walk the dogs now. So it's their time to go.
If you have any questions, you can email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com or message us on our Instagram page, Diary of a Death Investigator. We welcome feedback. We welcome reviews. We prefer the good ones, but if you have the bad one, you can leave it as well.
If there's a bad one, I'll send my dog after you. I'm just kidding. I won't.
And then we appreciate all the new listeners that we have. We have expanded to different countries. So to everybody who's currently binging, we appreciate you. And until next time.
Bye.